IoT Unplugged. Tune in to the Internet of Things. Hi, this is Kristian McCann, editor of IoT Insider, and welcome to our podcast, IoT Unplugged, where each episode will be examining and discussing some of the most interesting and pressing issues surrounding IoT today. LoRaWAN stands as a pivotal standard in the LPWAN arena, designed specifically for the IoT ecosystem. It distinguishes itself for its capability to penetrate concrete and steel, extending connectivity beyond the reach of conventional networks such as Wi-Fi and 5G, and achieving long distances with minimal energy consumption. Developed and promoted by the LoRa Alliance, LoRaWAN targets the mass IoT market, enabling small data packets to make significant decisions, a critical aspect for a wide range of applications, from smart cities and industrial IoT to agriculture and asset tracking. Since 2015, the technology's ascent has been remarkable. Yet what underpins this surge in LoRaWAN's adoption? And how does its alliance-driven approach equip it to tackle the evolving demands of the IoT landscape? To discuss this further, I'm joined by Donna Moore, CEO of LoRa Alliance. Donna, thank you for joining us. Could you start by introducing yourself and sharing a bit about what LoRa Alliance does?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kristen. LoRa Alliance is an open standard for low-power wide area networking, and we've been around for, I think, 7-8 years as an alliance, and our focus is really on the mass IoT market. So, low data rates, small data needed in order to make very big decisions. And the key with LoRaWAN is really the deep penetration through concrete and steel where, Wi-Fi and 5G can't go or do, and the long distance and low battery life. So that's really what LoRaWAN does at a very high level. And as an alliance, we have 3 key areas. We do marketing and awareness, really educating the market about how to solve their problems and what LoRaWAN can do for that in all the various verticals. We have a certification committee that certifies in devices, very important for reliability. And then obviously a technical committee that writes the standards and specifications and continues to grow and evolve the LoRaWAN standard. So that's kind of the LoRaWAN at a high level and the LoRa Alliance.
Okay, well, with that being said, let's move on into the questions. So talking about the growth in LoRaWAN, I was wondering what specific factors have contributed to the deployment growth of LoRaWAN across various sectors, and what do you think this suggests about the current and future landscape of LPWAN technologies?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the biggest growth pushing all networking technologies forward was really COVID. And, I hate to go back that far, but it's true. It really escalated the deployments and the needs in the market probably by, 6-7 years forward. So COVID moved it forward. It used LoRaWAN for remote monitoring, for distance detection, for cleaning environments, all the recommendations and needs for COVID, ensuring that, the places were clean. So all of that escalated it. And then labor, right? There was labor not being able to go in and start using the technology to replace some of the, daily checks and whatnot. So that escalated it quite a few years ago. And then over the last few years, the escalation has really been around inflation, world hunger issues, just so many global issues that came after COVID. Labor shortages was probably number one. Many people left the working environment. So that was the second big push that really pushed LoRaWAN forward. Now, having said that, we as an alliance over the last couple of years have really focused on cities, smart cities, buildings and campuses and utilities. And that growth has been incredible. Now, we certainly do other markets, right? Agriculture and asset tracking and industrial IoT. But as an alliance, we chose those 3 verticals. And I think the interesting thing that we've seen, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cities around the world that have deployed LoRaWAN for many different types of use cases. And once the city deployed the network, they would start with a anchor use case, and then once that use case was up and running, other departments came in and they worked with other departments to deploy more and more use cases at very little cost, since everything was already up and running. And from that, from all of those deployments, as an example, what we're seeing in the last 12 months is that success breeds success. So many cities or utility companies see, look to their left or their right and see other cities or other competitors getting significant operational savings with LoRaWAN. And so when they see the ROI and when they see that the deployment, can happen, and the outcome, not just the efficiencies, but also environmentally, and as well as safety for the citizens in terms of cities and buildings, actually. They look, and they see, wow, that's very similar to our needs. And so it gives them confidence to deploy. And that's probably one of the biggest things that we've seen in the last 12 months that really has pushed LoRaWAN forward.
Okay. Well, you mentioned a bit about LoRaWAN use in smart cities. I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate a bit more on that, like describing LoRa Alliance's strategy for expanding its collaborative ecosystem, and what this indicates about the role of partnerships in the IoT solution space.
Yeah, that's huge. So, it's our members really that are obviously driving these deployments. And for cities, we historically have seen an example of the use case is smart lighting, and they'll put the gateway and the smart lighting. Now you've got a complete network, and then they add it for trash or parking or many other municipality types of use cases. Some of them are also utilities based. So that's what we're seeing in smart cities. But what I would say, and you asked a question, I didn't quite answer it, was the future landscape of LoRaWAN, and really honestly all IoT technologies, is huge and growing daily. And I'll get back to the collaboration in a minute, and it's growing because I would say, again, historically, having a LP-WAN to make your operations efficient, whether you're a city or a building or utility or a factory, was a nice to have, right? And now with the economy and again labor and global forces, it's really a must have to be competitive and to be able to move forward with less labor. You have to have an LP-WAN strategy for all those types of tasks that are, monitoring refrigeration and checking it down. The things that either are dangerous and LP-WAN can do the checks and use the data, all the way to preventative maintenance, digital twins, and whatnot. So it is a must-have now. And we're finding that's what's driving LPN rollouts. Now, people talk a lot about sustainability, and they talk about ESG measurements so they can show their shareholders, and you need data for that. But really, we're finding that is second to the operational efficiencies and ROI. And the way to really get the best operational efficiencies and ROI is through collaboration. And that's one of LoRaWAN's absolute strengths. We're really clear what we do better than anyone, and that is the wide area networking, low battery life, low data, or long battery life, low data rates, distance. We're really clear about that, and we're not getting distracted by trying to grow into other areas. So because of that, we have incredible liaisons and partnerships that we deploy with based on the use case need. And so we have deployments with Wi-Fi, with Bluetooth, with RFID, with 5G, right? Because 5G and Wi-Fi do audio and video. LoRaWAN does not do that. They also do ultra low latency. LoRaWAN does not do that. So combined with these other technologies, and they don't do what we do, the number of use cases and verticals that we can support are really endless. So collaboration is key with other standards, and I'll go on, and with our members, right? We want to provide full end-to-end solutions because LPWAN takes a village to deploy. You've got everything from sensors to networks to gateways to visualization. And our members, and that's the key to the LoRa Alliance ecosystem, our members collaborate and together they partner and provide full end-to-end solutions. And that wasn't around several years ago either.
Okay. Well, also, you talked about how a lot of labor shortages is a thing that's also helped spur the growth of LoRaWAN. I was wondering, how is this ROI determined for LoRaWAN deployments, and what trends have you observed in the influences the adoption of LP1 technologies? I know you mentioned about it's to do with labor shortages, but I was wondering if you could expand on that.
Yeah, so with the labor shortages, if you think about, let me just give healthcare an example because we're in every single industry. They had nurses doing checks and or aids, but still very expensive on every hour on temperature for medications, right? Or people running around looking for equipment or monitoring equipment. All of that is LoRaWAN based in many hospital rollouts, right? They don't need to have physical bodies going around. Chevron is a member of the LoRa Alliance, and they have LoRaWAN implemented in their wellheads because they would pay a guy to go around and unsafe to do a dipstick to see if the oil heads were ready, to do some of the next processing. All of that's automated. In Target's a LoRa Alliance member. LoRaWAN, it's all throughout the stores and everything from cold storage monitoring, right? Why have someone manually do that? And or if it goes down, they're notified immediately that the cooler is out, time to go and, fix it before they lose the food and to spoilage, and stocking shelves. I mean, it just goes on and on. LoRaWAN is in Starbucks for cold storage monitoring as well. So anything that people are doing that's either not safe and can be done by a monitor or monitored so that a body doesn't have to be paid so much per hour to go do it, they can reallocate those resources, those human resources, to higher and different functions that monitoring can't do.
Okay. All right. Next question. We talked about LoRaWAN is growing. The demand for LoRaWAN certified devices is also rising. How does this certification process adapt to technological advancements, and what does this say about market confidence in LP1 standards?
Yeah, well, so I believe that standards are the only way to go. First of all, let me just say, in order to be interoperable with a wide variety of devices, right? Not a proprietary solution. I mean, we have, over 400 members, and they all make different devices for different needs, and you don't get locked in. You can shop around. So A, for interoperability, you need a standard, and B, for scale, right? If you're going to scale, you need all those various devices. If you're going to put up a network and want to add new use case, new use case, new use case, you need different vendors typically for those types of use cases. So interoperability and scale is critical for a standard to move forward. And certification for any standard, any technology is really key for confidence. So our standard is strong, right? We have an incredible standard. We write best practices guidelines to ensure that it's implemented correctly. And that's the key. Even if you have a strong standard, you don't know how people are building to that standard. So certification is one part, right? So they build the device and you want to certify it to ensure that it was built to the LoRaWAN specification. And it just helps with confidence, and it helps with knowing that, if you're going to roll out millions of sensors, thousands of sensors, even hundreds of sensors, you need to know it's going to work, because the last thing you want to do is roll another truck to go pick up all those sensors. And so the certification is key. And the other thing that we do that's really important is we do write best practice documents. And it's not because there's anything wrong with the standard, but again, once the standard is open and free to everybody, but there's hundreds of companies that take that standard and develop, the technology. And so we want to make sure that as they develop and implement the technology, we're giving them guidance on the best way to do it. Because the reality is they could take the standard and when they're developing it, it could go in many directions. So that's what the best practices is for, and that's what certification is for, is that you want confidence in the standard, you want confidence in the technology, and that's what LoRaWAN provides. It's confidence and education.
Okay. All right. Moving on to Industry 5.0. What role do you think LoRaWAN can play in that, and how can it contribute to sustainability and efficiency compared to other connectivity technologies?
So again, I even think with Industry 5.0, it's always a collaborative play. There's obviously LoRaWAN's implemented by itself, but I don't know that it's compared to other technologies. But let me speak about Industry 5.0 and why LoRaWAN has always been leading this. So when we launched, we have always been about people, planet, and profits. Those are our 3 Ps for the LoRa Alliance. And that really is what Industry 5.0 is. It goes beyond 4.0, which was really about efficiency and productivity as its sole focus, right? To including environmental support and human-centric solutions, meaning what is the best and for the workers in terms of safety and having them do their highest and best work to their skill set, as well as contributing to environmental and ROI from a business perspective. So 5.0 takes all three of those into account, and that is LoRaWAN's sweet spot, right? Safety, measuring for environmental issues, low cost in terms of developing it, and making sure that we are looking at all three of those, people, planet, and profits, to drive forward. We've always had those three as our focus.
Okay, the most recent technical recommendation aims to enhance LoRaWAN functionality. How do these improvements address existing limitations within their LP1 technologies?
Yeah, the technical recommendations are there to help development and deployment so that as they take the standard, there's guidelines to help them do it the right way. So I don't feel like there's limitations. I mean, as an alliance, we obviously continue to evolve the specification based on market need. We recently launched Relay and we recently launched, QR codes, and we continue to focus on how do we make development and deployment easier. And so the specs evolve. But the best practice docs are to help the market develop it correctly. Like I said, you can take a standard, and even though you have a standard, it could be developed not to the standard. So that's why they're very important.
Okay. What can you tell me about LoRa Alliance's efforts to ensuring interoperability among network components, and what are the challenges of creating industry standards in the LP1 sector?
Yeah, so for interoperability, again, along with conformance testing, which is our certification program, we launched last year as an alliance an interoperability event to really looking at the different networks and what's needed and making sure that when the devices are put onto a network, they are perform as intended. And our focus this year is to continue to expand the interoperability testing as well. So we are rolling out a whole new program for not just certification, but interoperability. I'm very excited about that. And, it helps to ensure that the devices will work on the network as intended.
Okay. In what ways has the LoRa Alliance used research findings, such as those from Beecham Research, to shape its strategic direction and priorities within the LP1 market?
Yeah, we look at and use speed and actually many other research. We do our own surveys as well as an alliance to really understand the market needs. And we're really looking to say, what are the buyers and end users needs of various verticals, whether it's cities, utilities, buildings, agriculture, industrial IoT. What are the needs that they're finding, and how do we continue to develop the standard to support those needs? So it's helpful to understand, are there any gaps in the market? Is there something, now that they've implemented LoRaWAN that they can move to that we need to move to as well? So that's part of the alliance and what our technical committee does. But absolutely, these reports provide us very important end user needs, and that's how we use them to continue to evolve the specification.
Okay, talking about LoRaWAN's involvement in satellite-based LPWAN communications, what challenges and opportunities does this present for the technology as a whole?
Well, I don't think there's any challenges other than awareness to the market. It's really exciting, actually, having satellites as a network option for LoRaWAN. I mean, obviously, I'm sure that everyone knows, but that is what's really cool about LoRaWAN is its flexibility, right? We have public networks and private networks and satellite networks and community networks and hybrid networks. So that's what makes it really focused on the needs. Like I said, we are all about focusing on solving the needs. So satellite is great in that it really helps with asset tracking. So, and again, because we're interoperable, as an example, you may have an asset that is on a terrestrial network, comes to a body of water and needs to go across an ocean. So it can move from the device, and the tracker can move from the satellite up to, or from the terrestrial network up to the satellite. Satellite can track it across the ocean, back down to the terrestrial network. That's one example. So asset tracking is huge for satellite. Another area is really in just hard to reach and remote areas where there is no other means of connectivity. Wild Networks does one with beehives out in the middle of nowhere, and they use LoRaWAN sensors directly to the satellite to track, the bees, the weight, the health of the hives. So there's just numerous needs for satellites, but it's also in conjunction with all of our other means of flexibility in terms of networks. And the one thing I want to say, and I really think it's important to clear up in the market about satellites, is LoRaWAN implemented long-range frequency hopping spread spectrum, which increases capacity for the satellites. And, a lot of times it's used for agriculture and especially utilities. And so with the release of the long-range frequency hopping spread spectrum, that has really been a game changer in enabling satellites within the LoRaWAN ecosystem. So again, together with all of our other networks, we've got the use cases covered because use cases come in all varied forms and needs.
Okay. Now, seeing as we're kind of still in the start of the year, I was wondering what opportunities or challenges do the LoRa Alliance and LPN market face in 2024, and what about how does this align with broader trends in IoT?
Yeah, I think there's a growth from a broader term perspective, growth for everybody. And like I said, it's a must-have now, not a nice to have. And the growth will be phenomenal, certainly for LoRaWAN, but I believe for other IoT technologies as well, meaning, RFID and Bluetooth and other networking technologies that help bring to life this information that is so critical for businesses. And I would say that the growth really is in all verticals. We're seeing growth in all countries around the world in terms of IoT. Like I said, we focus on the mass IoT, which is about 75% of the market, and the growth, what we've seen every year, is phenomenal compared to the year before. And And next year, as we move into 2024 and 2025, we're looking at really as an alliance, starting to focus more on industrial IoT and digital twins, which is going to be an additional huge growth for us as an alliance and for the market as well.
Okay. Well, I think that just about wraps it up. But before we go, I understand you have an event coming up, LoRaWAN Live in Munich in June. I was wondering, can you tell us a bit about that and maybe what can attendees expect?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yes, June 19th and 20 in Munich. And as I just talked about with industrial IoT and our focus, that's what led us to Munich. We have so many members and deployments in Germany around automotive and manufacturing that our focus there is really going to be around industrial IoT and talking specifically about deployments and their ROI, what people can learn from it. So this event will have the experts and knowledge really educating on very specific end user needs about LoRaWAN. And it's really an exciting event. We anticipate, I don't know, way over 500 attendees. And if you're interested in LoRaWAN and you really want to network, you want to grow your business, you want to learn about deployments, you want to learn about the different markets and how they're growing and what LoRaWAN is doing in those markets, this is the event of the year to come to.
Excellent. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. Donna, thanks for taking the time to speak to us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Kristian. It's been a delight, and hopefully you can come to Munich and bring your podcast and meet everyone that's heads down focusing on deploying LoRaWAN.
Well, you know what? Based on what you've said and from what I've read, it certainly seems like something I'd be interested in. So I'll get back to you, but I'm definitely angling for it.
Great. That'd be great. And Amy on this call can give you any information. You need to set up a podcast booth.
Remember to subscribe to IoT Unplugged wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to share with anyone you think would find it as interesting or as informative as you have. IoT Unplugged. Tune in to the Internet of Things.